ladies and gentlemen. How the hell are ya? It's Tuesday morning, Tuesday, May the 5th, 2020, 11:04 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am coming to you live from the VoiceMann Studios in Toronto, Canada. Here I am. Here I am. It's good to see everybody. I'm always looking to see, making sure we're on, we're live, everything's good, the meters are there. Look at everybody. Tabitha Short is here. How you doing, Tabitha? Duke Fleed, Jason Nike, Real Reveal. Real is R-E-E-L. I see what you did there. Great to see everybody rolling on in here on this Tuesday morning. And yeah, hard to believe it's already May the 5th. And I made a social media post early this morning about how, you know how, of course, May the 4th is Star Wars Day. Obviously, it's a play on May the Force be with you, May the 4th. It's cute. It's cute. It's fun. But, you know, sometimes people like to refer to as the day that follows, which of course is today, May the 5th, as Revenge of the 5th. Now, of course, obviously, referring to the 2005 prequel movie Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Oh, yes, fifth and Sith rhyme. But, you know, I was thinking, and apparently I'm not the first to the plate on this, but I on my own thought of this today. I sat there and I thought, now, wouldn't tomorrow, May the 6th, be a better day to call, you know, to make that pun, right? You know, because 6th is one letter more than Sith, right? You know, fifth and Sith. I think it should be, hey, it's May the 6th today. Is today Revenge of the 6th? Oh, that's kind of, I don't know. I just like, it kind of makes more sense. But I get it though at the same time, because obviously you have May the 4th and then you have that day in between. And it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like if you were to wait till the 6th of May to make that joke, it's like the joke's over kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you know what? The moment's passed. It's kind of like the moment's passed. Aha, May the 4th. Oh, ha, ha, ha. Oh, hey, it's Revenge of the 5th. Oh, ha, 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 ha. But if you wait that extra day, you know, hey, it's May the 4th. Everybody goes back to normal on May the 5th. And then May the 6th, you know, you're like that guy in the office who's like, hey, how about Revenge of the 6th? Bob, it's over, Bob. Okay, May the 4th was 2 days ago. Bob, it's done. It's done, Bob. It's over, all right? Sorry. You know, it's kind of like that. So I get it. You know, there's that lull in between where it's kind of like, yeah, you know, it only really works because 5th happens to rhyme, of course, with Sith a little bit. 5th, Sith. Yeah, kind of. And obviously it's the very next day. So, you know, you want to capitalize on the very next day. You know what I mean? I get it. But technically, if you think about it, 6th, Sith, 6th, Sith, kind of better. Just saying, Star Wars sweaty nerds. Just saying, kind of better. Hey, so today I want to talk about the remake. Well, I don't want to talk about it. Who the hell wants to talk about it? I want to, although I do want to, wow, I have like 5 bottles of water sitting here. This is unbelievable. I want to acknowledge that, of course, 2020 marks the 10-year anniversary of when the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street was released into theaters. I believe it was the 30th of April, I think it was released in theaters, 2010. And I went to see this movie in the theater. I remember this. It's funny what you remember, isn't it? I remember I went and saw it in, it's funny, I had stopped off at Sport Check. Now, Sport Check, I think, is Canadian. I don't think it's an American chain. Maybe it's American. Maybe it is. I don't think it is, though. But maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, Sport Check. It's like a sports store. A sports store. There I go again. Happens to me early in the morning, even though it's not that early. Sports store. You know, you buy like, you know, everything there. Hockey equipment, tennis equipment, football equipment, running shoes, sports attire. It's just, it's a sports store. So it's funny what you remember. I remember on my way over to the movie theater, I stopped off there to buy a couple of hats. and I bought a Under Armour. It was a white. I love this hat. I don't have it anymore. It was kind of like this one. And I'm very particular with hats, as in case you didn't know. I mean, obviously, I'm a hat guy. And I actually do have hair, folks. I do have hair. See that? Look at that. Look at that. Holy crap, McRae's got hair. I bet you there are people in the chat room right now going, holy shit, I thought he was bald. Oh my God. And the rest of your day, your mind is blown. The rest of your day, look, take off the glasses. This is kind of what I look like. Holy shit. Holy shit, McRae's got hair. I got hair. I'm just a hat guy. I like wearing hats. I've always worn hats. I'm a hat guy. I have a lot of hats, as you can see. If I was going to a wedding or a funeral or, or something like that, some sort of occasion where, a hat was not required, obviously I wouldn't wear a hat. I'd throw some gel on my hair. But, out and about, hanging around the house, doing stuff, whatever, I'm a hat guy. I am a hat guy. Yeah, I know. There are people right now going, no way, I thought he was bald. I thought he was just self-conscious because he was covering up his head. He was covering up his head. No, I have hair, folks. I have hair. So, anyway. There we go. Now I can hear myself. So I'm a hat guy, right? I got a lot of hats. And I was over at, I went over to Sport Check. And I was in there buying a couple of hats, and the Under Armour hat, which I really liked, and I bought an Oakley hat. I like this Oakley hat too. It was all black, and it was kind of like the Nike swoosh here. You see the Nike swoosh? I like how it's black, and it had the little Oakley kind of symbol in the bottom left or right or whatever it was. I love those hats. Don't have them anymore, obviously. Like 10 years ago. But I love those hats. But it's just kind of funny what you remember. Like I remember dropping in there on my way over to the theater, and I went to the theater by myself to see it. And I don't know. It's just kind of funny. Like, why? Okay, it's kind of funny what you remember. Anyway, so I went to the theater to see it. Obviously, probably, I don't know if I went right on the day it opened, but it would have been around this time of 2010. So in 2010, I was 31. And I remember walking out of the movie theater extremely disappointed, very disappointed. I was not happy with, and it really has nothing to do with Jackie Earle Haley. Look, I mean, anytime anybody portrays Freddy Krueger, for those of you that are just joining us, you may want to go back about 3 minutes. I take off my hat and show you my hair. No way! Yeah, way. No way! Totally way! Anyway, I wasn't, look, I mean, look, Jackie Earle Haley was, I think, a good choice. I don't know if he was the best choice, but I think he was a good choice. He certainly was the right size. Although I do find that I always found and still find, and this could have, and this is, this might be intentional. The glove on Jackie Earle Haley looks very big for his body. It looks like he's got a claw, and maybe that's what they were going for. I have to admit, I haven't dove into the special features of the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street because I really don't give a shit about it. Are there special features of a remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street? I have no idea. Anyway, so it looks kind of big on him, where I never got that sense looking at the glove on Robert. It just looked like a glove with, knives. Anyway, so it took a bit to get used to, but Jackie Earle Haley is a tremendous actor, and I thought he did a good job with what he was given. It was a different take, right? It was different makeup. They were going for more of a realistic look in terms of a burn victim, as opposed to sort of a monster kind of thing. And his voice was, obviously it's not the Freddy Krueger we know, but I mean, I looked, there's moments in the movie, there's moments in the movie where I'm like, I like what he's doing there. I like that. That's scary. That's scary. But the film overall was just a turd. There was no, I mean, we're introduced to emo Nancy. Like, we don't have this opportunity to, and again, it's not like the first Elm Street. There's a lot of, I mean, it's not a long movie. It's not like there's a lot of time where we have this, but I always found that at least with the original film, we are introduced to them. They're already having the dreams. Like, Tina's already having the dream, and Nancy's already having the dream, unbeknownst to us at the beginning. But there isn't that there's an arc, and we see sort of Nancy's kind of fall into hysteria a bit, right? As she continues to have these dreams, as she continues to like, what the fuck is going on? Oh my God, my parents lied. What the fuck? We kind of see this downfall. Nancy, and Rooney Mara's great. I mean, she's easy on the eyes. Who doesn't want to watch an hour and a half of her? But she just was, I just didn't feel anything for any of the characters. Everybody was already sort of, we were introduced to these characters already suffering from like massive insomnia. Like shit was already kind of going down, and I just thought it would have been nice to kind of see that transition. And I just didn't really care about any of the characters. And there was a lot of retreads, in terms of, and I get it, it's a remake. So, there's the bathtub scene and there's the coming out of the wall scene. And, again, to be fair to myself and to you guys, I haven't watched the movie in years. This is just going by from what I remember. I saw it in the theater and I did see it again afterwards, but I haven't seen it in like probably 7 or 8 years. It's been a long time, because why would I watch it? I don't like it. I don't like movies. I don't watch movies I don't like, and this isn't like it's so bad it's good. Not for me anyway. So, I just didn't like the film. I didn't think it was, and it wasn't because it wasn't Robert Englund. That's something I want to make very clear. It wasn't because it wasn't Robert Englund. It was because I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling the story. I wasn't feeling the characters. I wasn't connecting to any of the characters. I didn't care about the characters. It was sort of just a run-of-the-mill kind of, thing with a couple of cool moments, that were kind of cool. But other than that, didn't do much for me. But let's go over to an article on bloodydisgusting.com, because bloodydisgusting.com has an article that I want to bring up here. Let me just make sure that I am going to be able to do this. Okay. Let me... There we are. Over on bloodydisgusting.com. And this is on April 30th, 2020. Bloody Disgusting, the fine folks over at Bloody Disgusting have their pulse on the horror community probably better than anybody. I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, there are others. There's no doubt about it. There are others, but they are absolutely they're the OGs when it comes to the horror community. I believe, I stand to be corrected, anybody from Bloody Disgusting can correct me. I believe they've been around since like 2001 or something. They've been around, or close to that. They've been around a long time. Anyway, okay, so let's check this out here. There's good old Jackie Earle Haley. Like you know what? I mean, the look's all right. Like, I mean, if you just saw that's scary. I mean, that is a frightening look. Now, Jackie Earle Haley is a guy about my size. I think he's 5'8". I'm 5'8". Now, I think I'm a bit stockier than Jackie Earle Haley is. I think I might be just a tad broader in the shoulders, maybe. But certainly we are, for all intents and purposes, the same. But he's yeah. I mean, it's a. I mean, you weren't going to play. This movie could have been great. And somebody would have been like, fucking do like the fucking look at the fucking Freddy. I mean, it's just, it's bound to happen. And they knew that going into it, right? But just the look alone, if you look at the look, it's like, you know what? It's kind of fucking frightening. I mean, if I saw this guy coming to me in a dark alley or coming to my dreams, I'd be like, I wouldn't be like, oh, you're not Robert. I'd be like, fuck, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? This is a fucking scary guy, And so, yeah. Okay. So we scroll down here. What's the headline again? The headline is 10 years later, exploring the good, bad, and ugly, of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Okay. Let's scroll down here. So, while not so much a resurgence, it has been intriguing to see a few iconic slashers make a recent return. Michael Myers emerged from the shadows back in 2018 with the David Gordon Green-directed Halloween, and will be returning once again this year, hopefully, fingers crossed, in the new Halloween Kills. Chucky received a remake. and has a planned television show in the works, which is true. Don Mancini's got that sci-fi show that he's in the middle of trying to put together there. Even Leatherface saw somewhat of a return in 2007 in a 2017 movie, with his name in the title. And while we're at it, who knows when we'll see Jason emerge from the waters of Camp Crystal Lake again? That's very true. Hopefully sooner rather than later for all you hockey heads out there. No, you can't say hockey heads. You see, you can say Fred heads, because that makes sense. But hockey heads, I mean, that just implies you're a big hockey fan. Machete heads, maybe? But then again, there is a movie called Machete. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just messing around. I'm sure the chat room can come up with something for it. Maybe there is something. Crystal Lake heads? I don't know. Maybe there is something. Sack heads? Yeah, but that implies that you're a big fan of the second one, not necessarily the rest, right? You got to have something that's sort of universal, right? Yeah, potato sack heads. I get it, but I wouldn't approve that. I'd be like, that's good. That's good for fans of part 2. Crystal meth heads. Yes, crystal meth heads. Bum ching. There you go, buddy. Crystal meth heads, ladies and gentlemen. Crystal meth heads. Crystal meth heads. Let's continue on here. Then there's Freddy. Recently, Bloody Disgusting's The Boo Crew chatted with actor Elijah Wood. Yes, we know. Elijah Wood during their conversation. Let me try that again. Recently, Bloody Disgusting's The Boo Crew chatted with actor Elijah Wood, and during their conversation, he mentioned an interest in potentially working on a new Nightmare on Elm Street. On a fun side note, Dr. Sleep director Mike Flanagan has also expressed interest in providing his own spin on the slasher. But while that tidbit from Wood's conversation got me excited, it also got me thinking about the existing remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, directed by Samuel Bayer, written by Wesley Strick and Eric Helsereer. Wait a minute, this is small. Am I getting that right? Helsereer, something like that. I'm in the ballpark anyway, buddy. Sorry if I'm butchering your name there, my friend. Where are we here? There we go. Okay. Anyways, as of today, which is a few days ago now, April 30th, 2020, the Elm Street remake is 10 years old. Kind of hard to believe. My general memory, this is this guy, not mine. My general memory of the 2010 Nightmare was that it was fine. Not me. Nothing super memorable. No, I disagree. I thought it was garbage. But I did think there were even in some of the shittiest Halloween movies, I always end up finding some sort of redeeming quality. In terms of a shot or a moment or, oh, I like that moment. Oh, I like that shot. But a movie is a sequence of many shots that are supposed to be building a narrative and story that is coherent and all, moving towards a climactic moment that can make you feel fulfilled and satisfied. And this movie did none of that for me. But upon rewatching it, this is him again, not me, but upon rewatching it, it's interesting to see the changes made to Freddy's personality. Interesting. It was great to see his changes to his personality. Well, maybe he gets to that. I haven't read this article yet. I'm doing this on the fly, folks. As well as the shift in how his history with the children of Elm Street is approached. That I do agree with. That'll be interesting. While the Nightmare films before this remake focused on Freddy as a child killer, the 2010 Nightmare leans heavily into him being a child molester. Here's the thing that I find particularly interesting about the whole child molester, child killer debate. I don't think you need to tell people that he was, or even allude to the idea that Freddy Krueger, whether it's Robert Englund's Freddy or whether it's Jackie Earle Haley's Freddy or whether it's my Freddy and Dylan's New Nightmare or whether it's whatever the case is, I don't think you need to allude to the fact that he was a child molester at all. Not because it's, that's a kind of a, I get it. There are some people that are going to go, it's a bit touchy. It's a bit touchy. I get it. Hey, come on. I understand, right? But don't you think it's sort of kind of weird that he has an obsession with children anyway? Don't you think it's kind of like, to me, it was always sort of just implied that he has some weird thing going on with kids anyway. I mean, he's a child killer. He's obsessed with killing children. So, you know, if you're obsessed with killing children, you're obsessed with kidnapping them and doing God knows what to them before you take their lives. It's sort of heavily alluded to the fact that you may have been diddling kids anyway. I don't know. It's not said, but I don't think you have to necessarily say it. I mean, are there really people out there that are child killers but have no interest in them beyond just killing them? I mean, in order to have an obsession with children and killing children, you probably have some sort of weird, fucked up sexual thing going on there too. I mean, I kind of find that hard to believe that. No. I just like killing kids. What? I touch them? No. Get out of here. I just want to slice their throat. That's all. You know what I mean? So I don't think you need to ever in any movie allude to him being a child molester at all. I think it's sort of just already implied that he may have been kind of weird in that area. Maybe not. I mean, maybe not. I mean, maybe he wasn't. But he's got an obsession with kids. I mean, come on, right? So I don't think you need to sort of add the extra like they're two different things. I mean, I guess they could be two different things, but I think I guess the point I'm making is that there's a high probability that if you are obsessed with children and murdering little children, it's not a stretch to think that you might be diddling them too. I'm just saying. Anyway, but I think the reason why they didn't say it for obvious reasons is because when you go to that extreme, you know, it hurts your brand and it hurts your marketability for the character in a lot of ways. And I know that if I was a young boy growing up through the 1980s, as a young boy growing up through the 1980s, it would have been very sort of difficult from a branding perspective to get your parents on board with, hey mom, I want to dress up as that kid diddler, Freddy Krueger. I mean, that might have been, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, even though it's kind of subconsciously out there, you just don't really think about it. To just make it obvious kind of makes it less cool and less kind of like, so you want to dress up as the child molester, especially as we move along in life. And not that it was ever acceptable, but I'm certainly saying the climate we live in now, right? It's kind of like, really? You want to dress up as a child molester? Okay, knock yourself. So I think that's part of the reason why they kind of never really went. But all I'm saying is that you don't need to go there. It's sort of just kind of, you could, I mean, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, let's continue on here. Okay, so, where am I here? Never have film Freddy Vaughn. Where am I? Where did I go here? Well, the Nightmare films before the remake focused on Freddy as a child killer. The 2010 Nightmare leans heavily on him being a child molester. Okay, let's move on. For all the violence and fantastical imagery in the 2010 film, oh yeah, it looks spectacular. Look, The Last Jedi looked fucking amazing, you know, but that's what we expect. We expect that to look incredible. The special effects in The Last Jedi were outstanding. The special effects I mean, look, most of it was all CGI, but the special effects in the 2010 remake were great. They're great. No complaints about that, but of course they're going to be great. I wouldn't expect anything less. Imagery 2010 film. Freddy, let me try that again. For all the violence and fantastical imagery in the 2010 film, Freddy's past involvement with the children is what drives the film's horror compared to previous releases in the Nightmare franchise. The 2010's Nightmare has a lot going for it in regards to, let me try that again. Sorry, I got lost here. Okay. Let me just repeat myself one last time here. For all the violence and fantastical imagery in the 2010 film, Freddy's past involvement with the children is what drives the film's horror. Compared to previous releases in the Nightmare franchise, the 2010 Nightmare has a lot going for it in regards to unnerving emotion. Flashbacks to Freddy being with the characters as kids bring a hefty discomfort as more of a history is revealed. Well, I agree, but I am thrust. I feel I'm not thrust into, we're already there. I don't feel anything for them. It's not. I'm not emotionally attached to Nancy because I didn't get to know Nancy when she was cool, right? I can feel a level of empathy maybe, but you want to feel more sympathy than you do empathy when it comes to this kind of thing, right? Because those are two very different things, right? Sympathy is more in the line of that you can almost. It gets more personal. You can almost relate to it to some degree. They're more relatable. The characters in the Elm Street remake are not relatable. They're just already emo people in trouble, and from that perspective it's like, okay, well, that sucks, sorry to hear that, buddy, but and then but isn't it cool that we go back and we see that they've been dealing with this a long time? Sure, but we never have an opportunity to see what they were like before this began, and because we never saw that, and you don't have to take a lot of time with it, but because we never saw them smiling and happy, it just doesn't sort of, I don't know the ending of the movie, but it just doesn't. I get what this guy's saying, but again, it just didn't hit me the way it's hitting him. Or hit him, I should say. All right, let's keep going here. There they are. Yeah, great effects, though. Great effects. Love that. Like the first film in the franchise, so he's making a comparison here. Let's see. Like the first film in the franchise, the 2010 remake spends a good deal of time shifting between interactions with Freddy and the main characters pursuing research about him. Yes, I would say to some degree that is true. What makes the 2010 film interesting, however, is how it seems to slightly lean more into the conspiracies surrounding the parents and Freddy. That's true, because they've built this other backstory now, which is, it was, you find out through exposition from Nancy's mom in the original, he was a filthy child killer that murdered blah, blah, blah. And but you never see a flashback where you see that happening or, so I do agree. They dive more into that in the remake, which is interesting. And Freddy's not a character like Michael Myers. You've heard me say this 1,000 times. The enigma and the mystique of the character of Michael is so important to preserving the integrity of the character and the franchise if you have Michael Myers in it. It's integral. It's integral. Jason and Freddy are very different. We know their backstories. We know their story. We know where they come from. You know what I mean? So diving a little bit into Freddy's backstory, there's always going to be a sense of mystery that you lose. There's always going to be a sense of mystique that you lose, even with Freddy and Jason. But it's not as imperative to what I believe is the success of the character as opposed to Michael Myers. So that's kind of how I feel about that. Let me see here. For one, there is a decent level of conversation taking place between the central cast of teens and their parents, Nancy and Quentin, played by Rooney Mara, and Kyle Gallner, I guess, respectively. The font is a little small on my screen, so that's probably I think that's two L's and not an I. I don't think that's an I. Respectively, comfort Nancy's mom, Connie Britton. I don't know if the two T's are pronounced. Probably not. It's probably Brighton. When they come across old photos of their childhood. This alarms them because they do not have memories of meeting each other at such a young age. After being pushed to explain, Nancy's mom says that the parents wanted to hide what Freddy did to them so they would not have to reveal that trauma. Now, to be upfront, terms such as molestation are never explicitly stated, but the imagery is pretty forward in implying such notions. I agree. It's not absolutely stated, but it's much more implied in the 2010 remake than it ever is in the original film or in any of the original Elm Street movies. It's never as heavily implied that he was a child molester in any of the... there's moments where you may be able to draw that conclusion, but in the 2010 remake, yeah, they do. They make that quite heavy. I do agree with that. Let's continue here. Though it doesn't delve too deeply in, this remake does make a thematic effort to convey a fear of trauma. Jamie Lee Curtis would love this. The resistance of confronting the past, even as a fantastical being. Freddy comes across as much more realistic. Sorry, let me try that again. Freddy comes across as a much more realistic horror in the remake. I agree with that. To some degree I do. I do. In a dream sequence where Quentin learns about how the parents killed Freddy, there's a brief line of dialogue between a few individuals where they debate trying to bait Freddy out of hiding by using fire. The line in particular mentions the opposition of having their kids take a stand in court against Freddy. So rather than making their kids live through the potential trauma of there you go, Jamie Lee Curtis, trauma of a court case, they end up killing Freddy themselves. And Freddy might, the film briefly persists, wait a minute, be innocent. Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And where did I go here? Yeah, he might be innocent. Yeah, they allude to that. These alterations to Freddy and his backstory are the only components to give the film a unique voice. That's true. That is an element they added to the remake that was not in the original, or not hardly in any of the films. They allow the film to exude, I love that word, exude an unnerving air, fueling the 2010 nightmare with dread. Not only does, this guy sounds like he loves this movie. Not only does the new approach to Freddy's history bring an added horror to his character, but it builds upon the thematic exploration of the Nightmare franchise. It does. I just don't give a fuck about the characters. Like Freddy, there's been a strong focus on Freddy here, right? Maybe he'll get into the other things in a second. I don't disagree with most of what he said here. I think you have a scary Freddy in a bad movie. And I just don't care about the characters. It would have been nice to have seen these characters fall into despair. You know what I mean? And you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. I'm not expecting this to be a 2.5 hour film, but certainly I think it would have been a better choice for us to get introduced to these characters in their happy-go-lucky states and they start having nightmares because, Freddy is he's out seeking revenge, right? So I think that would have worked better. And that doesn't mean that the movie would have been great. I'm just saying I think it would have been better from a narrative perspective. Mostly the 2010 Nightmare is a hodgepodge of good and bad. I don't know about that. There are multiple elements that pull directly from the original film, such as the subverting of who our protagonist is and other scene-for-scene similarities. Example, the guy friend sleeping over and witnessing our false protagonist dying in her sleep. And while the case as a whole is nothing special, sorry, let me try that again. And while the cast as a whole is nothing special, I got to bring this up bigger next time so the font is bigger. The main blow to this remake is that of Freddy's personality. Though I will say, appearance-wise, I think the 2010 Freddy has an interesting look going for him, given the attempt to portray a more realistic spin on his burnt flesh. Whereas we've always known Freddy through the voice and mannerisms of the great Robert Englund, 2010's Freddy is played by Jackie Earle Haley. You may know him as... Okay, I'm not going to be able to pronounce... Is it... Rorschach from Zack Snyder's Watchmen, excuse me. Rorschach, is that how you say it? I'm not a superhero guy, obviously, so I don't really know. That's probably how you say it. As far as positives, I like Haley's voice in the film. It's creepy enough to add a sense of intimidation. I do too. I don't think that was a major issue at all, really. But that's really as far as I can go with the praise. And to be clear, I don't think the fault lies entirely on Haley's shoulders. That's a cool photo right there. That's actually a cool photo. Just a still image. That's a frightening photo right there. I think that's frightening. Yeah, I think that's a scary image. Great promotional still. When we think of Freddy from all his previous movies, one quality that immediately comes to mind is his black humor. Well, here's where we're probably going to disagree. But at the same time, I want to say that I do understand where he's coming from, right? Freddy Krueger is known for his, definitely. Look, from A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 on. 3 is that balance, right? It's got a couple of one-liners in there, but 3 is that balance between dark and, and funny. 4 is classically known as, the MTV Freddy, and that's when things really hit the fan. That's when, he's stepping on people in the sand with the, his shades and the whole thing. I mean, and then 5 is just, and then 6, my God, you know what I mean? And then New Nightmare, of course, in 1994 is sort of a return to form. But I liked the more serious, dark Freddy in this movie. It's a nightmare on Elm Street. It's not a fluffy dream on Elm Street. And again, this could be dependent of your age. It could be dependent on which Elm Street movie you saw first, which movies you just tend to gravitate toward. I mean, there's a number of factors, of why people like what they like. I like dark, scary Freddy, which is probably why my favorites are the first two Elm Street. I like New Nightmare too, but it's a meta-cerebral take on the franchise, so it's an acquired taste. It's not one that I would pop in and watch on a regular basis all the time, because the movie itself is asking me to now believe that the franchise is fictional. Now, we know it's fictional, obviously, but there's a movie out there telling us there's a movie in the universe telling us that the universe is fiction. You know what I'm saying? It's this whole meta-cerebral thing. So it's a great movie, and I am absolutely thrilled to be doing an unofficial sequel to it playing Freddy Krueger. However, it's not one that I would pop in on a regular basis. The ones that I pop in on a regular basis are 1 and 2, and sometimes 3, but rarely 4, 5, or 6. Rarely 4, and never 5 or 6. It's the way I am. So I like my Freddy dark and scary. I want to be scared. I want fuck, man. I want goosebumps. Fucking. Can you imagine sitting in the movie theater in 1984? Now remember, we live in a world that's desensitized now, but imagine sitting in the movie theater and maybe some of you did, right? I was only 5 in 1984, but imagine sitting in the movie theater in 1984, okay? Watching A Nightmare on Elm Street, and that scene when Freddy's glove comes up between Nancy's legs in the bathtub. Can you go, fuck, what the fuck? Like, now we see shit like, it's not a big, no one's seen it. What the fuck? I want to be scared, man. I want to be scared. That doesn't mean that Freddy can't have a couple of lines, right? Like even in the original, he's got, Tina, watch this. All that kind of stuff. Oh, this is God. Whatever. I mean, he's got a couple little things in there, but he's largely incredibly intimidating and scary, and very scary in the second movie. I mean, that is arguably the scariest Freddy we've ever seen. A little bit of ironic humor maybe, but I don't want him cracking one-liners every time he goes to kill somebody. But that's me. Englund's delivery of goofy humor not only brought a likable appeal to the character, well, for some, but also elevated his sense of twistedness. Haley's Freddy, however, barely attempts to follow in Englund's path, failing miserably when trying to emulate the latter's style. This is because Haley's Freddy is much more sinister in delivery, losing much of that chilling playfulness Englund's Freddy is known for. Well, yeah, chilling is a matter of interpretation, but I get what the author is saying. His dialogue here is more direct in the intention to cause harm rather than toy with his victims. So when he does attempt to try a goofy line, it feels out of place. I'm all for artists providing their own spin on an iconic character, but the 2010 Freddy is a lackluster villain all around. Even with his ability to hop onto his victims, or that's a whole other movie right there, folks. Hop into his victims' dreams, he comes across as a fairly ordinary bad guy due to his dull personality. Considering this portrayal of Freddy, I do agree with that. I will say this, that I think Jackie Earle Haley needed a little more personality. I will agree with that. Now, personality doesn't mean that you're cracking one-liners every time you kill somebody and it's goofy, childlike humor that's creepy. That doesn't necessarily mean that. Freddy had personality in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. He had personality in the first Elm Street. He had personality in New Nightmare, right? So personality doesn't automatically equate to him being silly like in parts 4, 5, or 6, or even a little bit in 3. But I kind of get what he's saying. Considering this portrayal of Freddy, the film is a much less spooky delight in comparison to the original entry, though its dark spin on past trauma, Jamie Lee Curtis, does allow it to have a unique identity among the franchise. The main appeal should be Freddy, and this Freddy's, I do agree with that, and this Freddy is a nightmare that the viewer could easily sleep through. I don't know. I think it's a movie you could sleep through. See, that's what it comes down to. Is I don't think, I get what he's saying. I do understand what the author's saying. I do. But the movie as a whole is garbage. It's boring. It's emo. It's like I'm watching some Tim Burton version of Freddy that's real emo and, hey, you want to go to bed tonight, baby? Yeah, let's go to bed. Yeah. You okay? Yeah. It's like, the whole cast needed personality. It wasn't just Freddy. The movie needed an injection of personality, my man. Holy Jesus. And I don't mean the cast cracking one-liners. I mean the movie needed an injection of personality as a whole. It wasn't just Freddy. Given that it has been a decade since this film was released, it won't surprise me to see A Nightmare on Elm Street return sometime in the near future. Oh, well, that's not an insight there. Of course it's going to come back, my man. It's going to come back. The more intriguing questions are, 1, who will take on the creative lead with the new film? And 2, what will their spin be? It goes without saying that for many of us horror fans, Freddy has a special place among our hearts. That's true. And I'd love to see the character come back with a fresh new approach to the classic material. Mike and Elijah, I'm looking at you and all your amazing creativity. I'm open to hearing what Elijah Wood's vision is, but I wouldn't necessarily say he'd be my first choice. If you have never seen the 2010 remake, I would only recommend it if you are morbidly curious now. Not just curious, you have to be morbidly curious. There are numerous entries from the franchise that stand on a higher pedestal than the 2010 title. My God, there are numerous entries in the franchise that stand higher than the 2010 remake. Okay. I don't know if I agree with that, no, I don't agree with that. I'd watch the 2010 remake probably, and I don't like the 2010 remake, but I'd watch it over Freddy's Dead. I'd watch it over Dream Child. That's probably about it. I'd still watch 4 over this one. And Dream Child has some, Dream Child's just weird. Dream Child is almost the perfect example of, it's not, they don't care about, Freddy doesn't even have to be in that movie anymore. It's just really about what sensational dream sequence and set piece can we come up with now. It's really cool. Anyway, I could go, maybe I'll talk about that on the show sometime. Morbidly curious. There are numerous entries from the franchise that stand on a higher pedestal than the 2010 title. Okay. However, I do have to give it to the film for its slightly more involved approach to confronting trauma of the past. Well, Jamie Lee Curtis would agree. Had the component been explored to a larger degree, I think the 2010 A Nightmare on Elm Street could have been something a bit more special. Well, I think it would have been a different movie. I think if you had dove deeper into the backstory, it would have turned into a more of a psychological horror then, which actually may have worked because obviously we're dealing with dreams, right? And we're dealing with the subconscious, and I think that actually might have worked. That actually might be something here that I might have been on board with that. Anyways, alas, there he is, and there's his picture. But I don't mind it. Obviously, again, it's practical effects with some CG in his face, but I didn't mind the look of Freddy. I think I think there was a lot of potential. That's what I'm going to say. I think there was a lot of potential in a very bad movie. I think it's just, and again, it doesn't mean there aren't some cool moments. And like the author said there, that there's some interesting things that they began to sort of explore. But as a whole, for me, it fell flat because of characters. I didn't care about these characters. I cared about what happened to Nancy. I cared about what happened to Tina. She looked vulnerable and frightened. Rooney Mara's Nancy just looked like a girl that just needed to get off drugs and go back to school. And I know I'm simplifying it, but it just, that's what she looked like, and everything was so emo and hey, what's going on? Yeah, I can't fucking take it. The whole cast needed an injection of personality. And I get that they're like that because they're sleep deprived. I understand the decision. They're sleep deprived. We've been thrust into the middle of this, right? So it's we're already close to the, oh my God, what's going on? It's shit, oh my God, these poor kids. but I don't feel anything. I don't know what they're like before. And I needed to know what they were like before. And I'm not saying that would have made this movie great, but I think it would have made it better. That's how I feel about that. Let me see. A couple of super chats. Hey, comment below and let me know after the fact. I don't think you can comment on live feeds right away, right? You have to wait till after, I think, but you can comment in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think of the 2010 remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street? 10 years this year. Hard to believe it's been 10 years. Comment below and let me know. What is your favorite in the franchise? I'd love to know that as well. Folks, in the chat room, 148 people watching. Let me know what your favorite Elm Street is and what you think of the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street from 2010. Let's go over to the super chats. A couple super chats came in here. Eddie Greens 101 says $2 for the hair. Thanks, Eddie, my man. That's right. For those of you that are watching now, the first 5 minutes of the show, I took off my hat and showed you that I actually had hair. You might want to go back and watch that. It'll blow your mind. Intel Wild says, thank you for the super chat, Intel. Says, I saw this in theaters once and I've never watched it again. And I've watched Rob Zombie's Halloween films multiple times. That tells you how bad I thought it was. Oh, there you go, Rob. Yeah. I saw this movie in the theater, but I think I saw it again on, maybe it was TV, maybe? But I haven't seen it. I don't own it. Let's just put it that way. Intel Wild says, sends another super chat. Thank you, buddy. Jason fans should be called puckheads, Dave. Get it? Hockey masks and I get it, my man. I get it. That's not bad. Let's see. And TMB sends in a very generous super chat. Thank you, TMB. Says, I was bummed that I couldn't watch live last week, having to hold too many online meetings for work, but I'm here now. Great show, Dave. I remember seeing Nightmare 2010 in theaters. Why do they always go to the backstories? And I'm also going to read a super chat that was lost last week. Last week on McRae Live, I was trying to I'll answer your question in a sec here, TMB. But last week I was trying to, I was funneling a lot of super chats and I missed super chats. And I'm just trying to get to that now. Where are the super chats? I'd have to, I meant to do this before and I totally forgot. I should have done this before and YouTube's changed everything on me. And I'm trying to find where they would keep the, maybe it's under, oh, it's probably under here. That's probably where it is. Maybe? No, maybe not. No, I don't think it is. Why wouldn't it be under there? No, that's not there. You'd think it would be here. Oh, maybe it's under there. No. They don't make these things easy, folks. They don't make these things easy. Let's just say that. They do not make these things easy. My goodness. And I said I was going to answer today on today's show. And here I should have been ready for this. Naturally, YouTube is trying to, oh, wait a minute. Maybe it's over here, maybe. Maybe I can get to it. No, they're not going to let me get to it. You know what? I'm going to... Jesus. I should have had this ready beforehand. And that is totally my fault. Totally my fault. I should have had this ready. Trying to navigate to get to the super chats. If somebody watching who gets super chats on their channel, let me know where to navigate to find the super chats. And I will scroll back and answer the one that I need to answer. Just let me know, at me in the chat room if you have a channel which is monetized and you are able to receive super chat. Some of you might have that. Where I access that on YouTube's new dashboard now. It's just insane that they're make work projects, folks. They're make work projects. Dave, I remember seeing Nightmare 2010 in theaters. Yes, I was bummed that couldn't go watch it how many times online meeting for work, but I'm here. A great show, Dave. I remember seeing Nightmare. Here's why do they always go to backstories? Well, I think they go to backstories because, obviously some stories are telling the backstory of a character or a story sometimes is really good. It's really interesting. It provides context. It fleshes things out a bit more. It makes you appreciate certain things about a character or a person's arc or journey, whether it's the antagonist or the protagonist or the anti-hero or, whatever. It can help, provide context. But it's all dependent on how the character is created, the lifeblood of the character, the DNA of the character. It all depends. I think Michael having a backstory or knowing too much about his backstory ruins the character because of how he was birthed, right? Freddy and Jason are a bit different. I mean, we knew quite a bit about Freddy's backstory in the original Elm Street. We knew through exposition at the end of the first Friday the 13th about Jason drowning in the lake, and he wasn't a very good swimmer. And they were too busy making love on the beach, and they did. We find out all about that in the last 15 minutes of the movie. So that stuff's revealed in the original Halloween. We know nothing, and that's the birth of the character. That's the birth of the character, right? And then in the second movie, of course, we find out that he's after his sister, which I will to this day say again is completely unnecessary. You take out the dream that Laurie has in the hospital and you just restructure the dialogue a bit in the back of the marshal's car, having another reason for them to go back to the hospital, and you don't have to change anything. And again, I said this on Two Dudes and Some Bullshit the other day. The reason for that is because the character of Laurie Strode herself never actually finds out that she's Michael's sister. Like, we actually never get that payoff. We never get to see her discover that. We never get to see her find that out. It's obviously she would have found it out probably afterwards in the ambulance at the, going to wherever she's going, right? But we never see it. So you can remove it from the story and the rest of the movie can stay the same. It doesn't need to be there. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I think I think there are some films that and some stories that are required and some that don't. I will say this. I think we are in an era now, we have been for quite some time, where going back also is nostalgic. We live in a nostalgic era now. And I think, telling a backstory is also a form of sort of nostalgia in some ways. Like Rogue One was a completely and utterly unnecessary story. I don't give a fuck. I don't really care, and Rogue One could have been great. It still would have been unnecessary. It was just, hey, here's an idea. Hey, let's go back and tell who cares? Like the Obi-Wan series. I know fans are I don't care. I really don't care. Am I going to watch it? Sure. I'll watch it because it's there. Why not? But I could not care less if it ever got made. I don't care. I know everything I need to know about Obi-Wan. I knew everything I needed to know about Obi-Wan in A New Hope. I know everything I need to know about that man. I don't need to see him in a series. I just don't. It's do something new. Do something, create new characters, create something different, anyway. But so sometimes it's warranted and sometimes it's not. But in terms of Freddy, like the author of the Bloody Disgusting article said, I think I think that part of the remake is kind of interesting. Now, of course, again, they heavily allude to him being a child molester, which is unnecessary because, as I mentioned, if you are hanging out with kids and murdering them, you're probably doing other things too. It's a good chance. So yeah, but I do like how they tried to add on to that. I just thought the movie was just void of any personality, void of any oomph, chutzpah, you know what I mean? It was just dark and depressing. It was just a depressing movie, and there needs to be a depressing angle to a movie like an Elm Street film. But it needs to have a little bit of, warmth somewhere, you know what I mean? How I feel anyway. Okay, did anybody at me? Oh, wait. Did anybody at me in regards to the... No, I don't think anybody did. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. I'll figure it out. I'll keep checking back here. I figured it out not too long ago. No, it's not playlist. That's not right. Okay, I go to my dashboard. I'm on my dashboard. Yeah, It doesn't really... It's so lame. Maybe it's... Like, you think it would be under analytics, and then you go to there... But there's nothing. Oh, wait. Well, they don't make these things easy. I should be able, something like super chats where they're listed. I should be able to it should have its own, well, like on the other thing before they rearranged everything. That's what I think anyway. Unless it's done individually by videos. Wait a minute. Let me go back. It would have been, I think it was episode 50 of McRae Live, right? I think that was it. And then I scroll down and maybe there. Oh, no, I don't know. I feel bad now for the guy that gave the super chat last week. I said I was going to read it on today's McRae Live, and I have every intention. If I don't read it today, obviously, which looks like I'm not going to be able to, I will find it. And if you were watching, I am committed. I am going to read it on Thursday's show, because he sent in a $20 super chat, which I missed on Friday's episode of McRae Live. You absolutely, everybody who sends in super chats, deserves to have their questions answered. So my apologies. I should have had this up beforehand, and I forgot. There's no excuse. Let me see here. Scrolling, a couple more super chats came in. Chris Baber says, to the shit show. Thank you very much, Chris, my man. To the shit show. Billy Van. Dave, if you had a choice, if you had to choose, which one do you find to be a better film? The Nightmare remake or Halloween 6? The better film. Well, and what I like better, I think I would probably watch, how are we measuring it, right? But I would say that I would probably watch Halloween 6 over the Nightmare remake. Yeah, I would say that. Dusty Rose says, hey, Dave, are the teens in H5 to Friday the 13th? That's a good question. I think there's to a degree. I never think of Friday the 13th when I watch that movie. It's just a poor movie. It's just everything that makes the only redeeming quality in that movie, the only thing, is that there's some pretty okay fall atmosphere. There's a couple of nice, bits of mood. And the laundry chute scene is kind of cool. Like that's always kind of cool. But other than that, it's a fucking garbage movie, and Michael it's just a bad movie. It's just a bad movie. What is there to say that I haven't said already about that? I'd just be repeating myself. Mason James says, always the first one. Remake was a money grab. Always the first one. Remake was a money grab. Well, all movies are money grabs. Their first priority is to make money. But I know what you're saying. Let me scroll back here, see how you guys are doing. Great to see everybody in the chat room today. Who is she? Says, I always wanted them to pick back up the Freddy murdered their older siblings thing. That would have been a great ad. Do you know about this hidden plot? What do you think? I always wanted them to pick back up the Freddy murdered their older siblings thing. What is that? You know what? That does ring a bell. Who is she? And who are you? Who is she? Who is this woman? You know what? I have heard something about that. And yeah, if somebody knows more details on what Who Is She is talking about, start a little explanation there in the chat room, because I think I have heard something about this. It might have been in and around the time that I learned that originally Freddy's Dead was going to be Nancy. Well, I'm not going to say originally. There was an idea, I believe, for the final Nightmare, if I'm not mistaken, to have Nancy, Heather Langenkamp, actually go to, unless that's an extension of what you're talking about, I'm not sure, but go to Freddy's dream world where they're no longer afraid of him or something like that. And I think the final Nightmare all takes place in his world or something like that. There was something like that. I thought that was a very interesting kind of cool idea. Of course, again, it all depends on the execution, but that's an interesting question. I have heard something about this. I have heard something about that. I always wanted them to pick back up the Freddy murdered their older siblings thing. Their older siblings. So you mean that Freddy would have murdered whose older siblings? Like the Elm Street kids? That's cool. That's cool. William Long sends in a super chat, says, "Hey Dave, I thought actually that the opening to It 2017 was the closest to that type of Freddy we both seem to prefer, with Pennywise toying with his victims but maintaining a sense of menace." Yeah, I actually quite like the opening of It Chapter 1. Which It Chapter 1 and 2 was shot up here in Port Hope, actually. There's a town about an hour, I want to say an hour and a bit east of Toronto called Port Hope. And that's the town that stood in for Derry, Maine. And I actually, a buddy of mine was a PA on It. So he was able to let me know some juicy details when that movie was shooting. I was going to go down to the set, actually, but then I couldn't. We couldn't... our schedules couldn't jive. But yeah, both movies were shot up here. Yeah, I like the Chapter 1, and I like the opening of that movie, but I thought the CG for tearing Georgie's arm off, spoiler alert, I thought it was totally unnecessary to do it CG. You did not have to do that. Just fucking stick his arm into his jacket, which is probably what he did anyway. But I just think the whole CG around that was unnecessary. And seeing the CG, and I didn't like that aspect of it. But I thought Skarsgård did a good job. You know, it was creepy. And that is, it's a good example of sort of the style for which you're talking about, a good modern example of sort of that kind of style. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I understand what you're saying. Let me see. Anybody commenting? Nobody knows what the older sibling thing is. Sorry about that. Who is she? I'll have to look that up. After the show and see if I can find something on that. And maybe we can talk about it again on another show. But really cool stuff. Thank you for the question. The Smokies, or the Smoky S, says, is it the Smoky S's? The Smokies? Anyway, hey Dave, I remember you talked about Bangor, Maine a little bit in an old video. Did you ever see Bar Harbor? Yeah, I've been to Bangor. I've been to Stephen King's house, not to his house, but to the outside of his house. This goes back to 1996. So I was 17, and I was there for a wedding. And I don't think I did, but you know, this is 24 years ago, so it's entirely possible that I may have, and I just don't remember it. I don't recall. But Bangor's beautiful. And what was really cool is we went over to Stephen King's house. And for those of you that, now I believe he's selling that house if he hasn't already, he's lived there for years. And I believe he's selling it from last I read, and he's turning it into a museum, I think, like a Stephen King museum or something like that. Something like that. I heard something like that. I think that's what he's doing. Anyway, I stand to be corrected on the details, but it's something like that. But yeah, when I was there in 1996, he was living there. I think he might still be, although maybe not a lot. And he was out on his deck when we were there. We were out on the road. He has these big black iron gates with two big bats on either side, like gargoyle bats that sit on these iron gates, and a beautiful red house that just kind of sits in the back. And he was out on his like, it was like a deck, like a top deck, like on the top floor. He was out there sitting there. Now he's far enough away that it's not like you could yell to him, and you know what I mean? But you could tell it was him. You could totally tell it was him. So that was really cool. I think he was, for some reason, and I totally stand to be corrected, obviously, but I have this, I think he was topless. I think maybe he was just getting some sun or something, because it was the summer. It was July. So maybe he was, I don't know. It's kind of weird. But anyway, yes, I have been to Bangor. Only once, 24 years ago. H.E. Pennypacker says, Sir Dave, do you like the 2007 erotic thriller Vacancy? Erotic thriller? I wouldn't call Vacancy an erotic thriller. Really? Would you call Vacancy an erotic thriller? I would just call it a thriller. With Luke Will, a horror thriller, erotic. I mean, I know there's subtext to the movie, but I wouldn't call it an erotic thriller. It's not like Basic Instinct or something like that, or you know, Yeah, I wouldn't. Anyway, with Luke Wilson and the vampire from Underworld, you mean Kate Beckinsale? I think it's Kate Beckinsale, right? Yes, I do. I do like that movie. And I knew I was going to, I mean, again, it's, I don't think it's amazing, you know, but I do like it. I love the concept. I love that they go to this seedy motel because they have to. They're there. They go into a room. They put in a tape, and they start seeing people like shit going down on the tape in the bedroom that they're staying in. I always thought that was great. And the under like the under the ground sort of like trap doors and shit and trying to get to the, I love it. Oh yeah, it's great. It's a creepy, eerie, fun movie to watch. So yeah, I do like Vacancy. Didn't they do a Vacancy 2 or 3 or 75 or something? I don't know. Excuse me. Mark Williams says, "Hey Dave, being a Harrison Ford fan, have you seen him in Frantic from 1988? Yes, Roman Polanski, I believe, directed Frantic, 1988. Yes, great movie. I love that movie. Not a Harrison Ford movie you hear a lot of. Not a Harrison Ford movie you hear a lot about. There was a time in the mid 80s where Harrison Ford was starting to branch away a bit from the traditional action hero he had become, because obviously he did Star Wars in 77, Empire in 80, Return of the Jedi in 83. He did Raiders of the Lost Ark in 81, Temple of Doom in 84. So that's 5 sort of heavy kind of, I know the Star Wars films are not action movies per se, but, you know, it's a similar sort of genre in the sense of, you know, high octane, spectacle, action, adventure, you know what I mean? So he started to kind of move away from that a bit to flex his acting chops. That's when he did Witness in 85, I believe. He was nominated for his one and only Academy Award. So he did Witness, and then I believe he did The Mosquito Coast as well. I think that might have been 86. Maybe 87. That's one of my favorite Harrison Ford movies of all time. If you guys have not seen The Mosquito Coast, directed by Peter Weir, I think it was Peter Weir, right? Let me see. Peter Weir, I think, is the same guy that did Witness, if I'm not mistaken. Mosquito Coast. Yes, it was directed by Peter Weir. Yeah, that's right. 1986. Yeah. So he's got Witness in 85. Let me scroll down here. I'm on his IMDb page, so here I might as well do it. Yeah, and Helen Mirren is in The Mosquito Coast as well. So when you go back to the mid-'80s, so yeah, you have 85 Witness, 86 The Mosquito Coast, 88 Frantic, 88 as well. So he's got 2 films in 88. Working Girl, right? Working Girl. That's a good movie. I like that movie a lot. So you got Working Girl, Frantic, The Mosquito Coast, and Witness. 4 movies there, all on the side of 3 years that are very different from what he was becoming, right? So he was flexing his acting chops. And then he does Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade because he probably felt he could, because he had done 4 movies that were, you know, not what he was known for doing at that time. You know what? I'll go back to an Indiana Jones movie. He did that. But then he jumped right back into flexing his acting chops again with Presumed Innocent, which is another great film, Regarding Henry, which is one of his best performances of all time, from 1991. And then after that, he gets into Jack Ryan and Patriot Games in 92. So, yeah, I will say that anyways, I went off on a tangent there. See, you get me talking about Harrison Ford, I go off on a tangent. I have seen Frantic, pretty good little mystery thriller there. And I believe it was Roman Polanski, if I'm not mistaken. Fucking Roman Polanski. Let me see here. William Long was the last super chat. Okay, good. Just want to make sure I'm not missing any, folks. Not missing any. Great to see a lot of people in the chat room today here on this Tuesday afternoon. Let me see. Who do we got? Somebody maybe. Aaron Ponder says, remember when they would show horror movies on USA Network with Gilbert Godfrey? What was that? Well, we don't get the USA Network here in Canada. We get a lot of US channels here. We get most of them. Maybe we get the USA Network. I don't remember that, though. But I was going to say my fellow Americans. Well, I guess we're all North American, aren't we? It works from a certain point of view, right? But my fellow North Americans, or specifically in the United States, would probably know what you're talking about better than I would. Alexander Dirksen says Blade Runner is my favorite movie of all time, and 2049 is also great. Blade Runner is fantastic. When I was in Los Angeles in 2018, my girlfriend and I stopped by. Is it the Ellis House? I think that's what it's called. The Ellis House, I think. Is that what it is? The house in... Maybe it's not the Ellis House, is it? Ennis House, excuse me, the Ennis House. The Ennis House in Hollywood, which is Harrison Ford's house in Blade Runner. And I have some photos of me and my girlfriend by that house. There's a cool, actually, photo of us. We just took on our phones. We set up the phone and the timer, and we're both on either side of the frame against the wall of the Ennis house from Blade Runner. Really cool stuff. Great stuff. Yeah, awesome stuff. Love Blade Runner. I didn't like it as a kid because it was a little too cerebral, a little too slow. Because, when I was a kid, I was used to, Indiana Jones and Han Solo. And, you get to Blade Runner and you're like... because it's more of an intellectual sort of sci-fi film, right? It's not, high octane action every 5 seconds. But as an adult, as I grew into an adult, I gained a better appreciation, a much better appreciation for it. All right, let me move over to the other camera. Why not? Hey, how you doing, you sons of bitches? Good to see you guys here. Yankee Fan 24 says, Stallone confirmed Demolition Man 2. Stallone confirms a lot of things. Let me just say this. I'm not saying it's not true. But I believe this was via his Instagram where he was answering a bunch of questions. And he did say that Demolition Man 2 is in the works. But, Stallone over the years has said a lot of movies are in the works, and they never come to fruition. So, but that's not to say that but when somebody says a movie is in the works, unless I missed the article where it was greenlit and it's moving into pre-production. Like if somebody can send me an article where it says Demolition Man 2 moves into pre-production, with director so-and-so. I mean, if you can point that to me, well, then I'll eat crow. But as far as I know, this is coming from Sly going, it's in the works, and it's like, oh my God, it's in the works. It's like, well, hang on. In the works could be he had a conversation with Snipes, and Snipes was like, yeah, man, let's do it. I need to pay off more debt. Let's fucking do it. And, somebody at the studio said, yeah, sure, do a treatment. We'll see. You know what I mean? Like that literally can mean it's in the works. Now you can also have it further along and have official agreements, meaning that it's in the works, right? But there's a lot of movies that move into it's in the work phases and never see the light of day. There are a lot of movies that get greenlit that never see the light of day for various reasons or another, that get greenlit, but then something happens, they pull back, it gets delayed, and then it puts shelved. And there are hundreds, if not thousands of shelved projects over the years. So, yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. The Smokies has a good point. Stallone saying Demolition Man 2 is a go is like saying Twins 2 is a go. I agree. Do you remember that? Twins 2? Eddie Murphy, Arnold, Danny DeVito? Nothing. Now, mind you, to Eddie Murphy's credit, that was kind of like a Coming to America 2 kind of thing. And that did happen. They shot that. That's coming out this year, hopefully. It's a movie that doesn't need a fucking sequel. I don't know why you're doing a sequel. It felt to me like it was like, we had such a great time making that. We had such a great time making that movie. Let's make it again. And they're just like, let's go make it again. It's like a family, reunion. Like, make it again. Really? Coming to America 2? Really? I mean, I'm going to watch it. I love the first movie. I love me some Eddie Murphy, man. Love me some Eddie Murphy. But really? I would rather get Beverly Hills Cop 4 to make up for that shit show 3. And John Landis directed 3. John, my man, John Landis. He's directed some real cool, really good movies. But Beverly Hills Cop 3 was not his high moment. So I'd rather hear like, fucking get Beverly Hills Cop 4 going. I mean, it's all for the same reasons, nostalgia, and it's all for the same reasons. But I think there's more of an argument to be made to kind of maybe finish off the Beverly Hills Cop series on more of a higher note. It's like Indiana Jones 5, right? You don't really need to do an Indiana Jones 5. It did end with Marion and Indy getting married and blah, blah, blah. But I understand it wasn't the movie we needed. So I get it. You know, I get why you want it on more of a higher note. I think that way with Beverly Hills Cop 4. But Coming to America? Coming to America was great. And it's not a series. So, you know, now you're going to, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, look at Dumb and Dumber, right? Dumb and Dumber didn't need a sequel. It got one. Wasn't as good as the first one. Now, I actually don't mind Dumb and Dumber. I'm looking up there. I should be looking down here. That always happens when I switch cameras. There's about 4 minutes where I'm looking up there and I should be looking down here. That's so funny. Hey, what's going on? I got to switch earlier. I think that'll help. It's like, why? Although maybe to some people, it looks like I'm just kind of like staring off into the ether as I'm complaining. Maybe that's what it looks like to some people, and then it kind of works, right? Yeah, I don't understand why you would do a Coming to America 2. I think it's unnecessary. But you're right with what you're saying. Demolition, and it's not to say that Demolition Man 2 won't happen. It's not to say that there haven't been conversations. Maybe there have. Maybe Sandra Bullock is involved with the conversations. But there is a gigantic leap from Sylvester Stallone saying, it's in the works, to being greenlit with a script and a director. Let's just keep that in mind, okay? I have no doubt that he would do it. But what phase of development that movie really is in is, you know, a whole other thing. Oh, Weeb says, hated the third Dumb and Dumber movie. I just consider it 2. I know there was the Dumb and Dumber early years of Lloyd and whatever that was. It wasn't even Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels, but I consider the Dumb and Dumber 2 the actual sort of sequel. And there were things in there I went to see that, you know, in the theater, and there were things that I liked. But as a whole, you know, it's kind of like, and here's the thing too, and I learned this from Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean. I keep looking up there, Mr. Bean. Here's the thing, I learned this from Mr. Bean, and he's right. He actually makes a good point, Rowan Atkinson. This is a few years ago now. And again, it's not an exact science, okay, but I get the principle of what he's saying, and I think you will too. So Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson, love Rowan Atkinson. He's hilarious. I love him in the Johnny English movies too. He was being interviewed on British television. This is, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago or so. And he was asked, maybe you saw the interview. He was asked, you know, will we see Mr. Bean again? You know, are you going to do Mr. Bean again? Do like a revival Mr. Bean or a Mr. Bean movie or something? And I'm paraphrasing what Rowan Atkinson said, but he basically said, well, listen, you know, I don't think there's anything I could do with the character that I haven't already done, which is true. I mean, if you see all that, I mean, he's kind of exhausted that character, right? Funny shit, but he's exhausted it. And he said, and the older you get, the more sad it becomes when you're playing somebody who's supposed to be a simpleton, right? Like Mr. Bean's supposed to be, he's not like cognitively simple, but he's a simple guy. You know what I mean? It's like the Dumb and Dumber guys, right? It's funny when they're 30. It can become sort of awkward and sad when they're 60. Do you know what I mean? Like you kind of feel awkward even poking fun at it when you're 60, you know, and it looks kind of weird and sad. Like you just kind of see this sad old man as opposed to this funny 35-year-old guy. Do you know what I mean? You just kind of see somebody who's kind of sad, this 65-year-old sad, simple guy, you know, and he's got a good point. There was something strange seeing Jim Carrey and because they almost start to become caricatures of themselves. Like they're like seeing Jeff Daniels and Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber. I saw Lloyd and Harry. Seeing them in Dumb and Dumber 2, 20 years later, they were old enough that it almost felt like I was looking at Jeff Daniels and Jim Carrey trying to be Lloyd and Harry. Like it looked sort of like it kind of looked like your parent, not that they're old enough to be my parents because they're not, but it sort of was kind of like, although they're close, I would say, I mean, I'm 41 this year. Jim Carrey's probably, yeah, he might have, if he's old enough to be my dad, he would have had me as a teenager. But so it just kind of has that dad kind of feel, like when your parents try to be cool, you know what I mean? It's like, guys, you're too old for that shit, you know? I get it. I totally get it. You know what I mean? Totally. And I sort of totally. I kind of worry about that with Coming to America, where it's kind of like, you know, is it going to be just more sad than hilarious? Because, you know, in Coming to America, or, you know, in the first one, they were like late 20s. Now they're like late 50s. You know, it's just kind of like, we'll see though. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. But that's how I kind of feel about it. Those are the things I tend to think about that I kind of worry me sometimes. Let's see here. Super chat comes in from Billy Van. I enjoyed the video you posted about your father. I see a lot of similar features in you two. Do you have a clip with him talking about Elvis? Thank you, by the way. I probably do somewhere. Yes, I probably do have a clip somewhere of him talking about Elvis. Absolutely. There are articles for sure that you might be able to find. If you were to Google Earl McRae, Elvis Presley, you might find some articles, although I'm not sure. I mean, my dad's been dead for 9 years now, so I don't know how many articles will stay up there and what won't and things like that. But yeah, he was you know, not a perfect father, obviously, but certainly I had a very good relationship with him. And you know, he was a great dad. He was a great dad, you know. And when I say not perfect, I don't want any misunderstandings. I'm not saying he was like an abusive dad or anything like that. I'm saying he wasn't a perfect person. Like, we're not all perfect, right? But he was a good dad. And certainly when we were younger, he was a good dad. He had a bit of trouble sort of identifying with us and having a relationship with us as we hit our teenage years and in our early 20s. And he had a bit of trouble because we weren't the young kids anymore. But I started to have a pretty good relationship with him as I, you know, got to my mid-20s, 30s, you know. Well, he died when I was 32. So it's too bad. I would have loved to have had a longer relationship with him. But yeah, I definitely do. And if I can find them, I will most certainly post them 100%. Let's see. What are we going here? It is, let's take another 10 minutes, another 10 minutes on the show today. Let me see. Duke Fleet says, Dave, if you could direct a new Nightmare on Elm Street movie, how would you approach it? Well, I think it's obvious. Well, it depends. Am I writing it or am I just directing it? Because sometimes you can be a director, not the writer, and that means you have to direct somebody else's vision. Now you bring your own directing sensibilities and vision to the story, but certainly it's not your story. It's not your characters per se. So if I was writer and director, I think you guys know, I would go dark. I'd go old school. I would probably remake A Nightmare on Elm Street. Because I don't think the 2010 film did it justice. So I would remake it in a darker, more of the kind of the ways that I've always talked about on the channel. Or, why not just do a direct sequel to the first movie? You know, I could see them doing that. If they do a sequel, or another film, which they will, but if they decide to do a sequel, my advice would be is to set it after the first movie. I know there are people that are going to say, well, what about after the third movie? Yeah, but getting rid of 3, which is beloved, would be like getting rid of the beloved Halloween 2. I mean, I think people will get over it. And it's always there. They're not like taking it off the shelves. But I think to make Freddy scary again, like really scary again, I would be interested in seeing a direct sequel to the first movie. That would be kind of cool. I wouldn't, but if you don't want to do that and you want to make it a direct sequel in the franchise, then you do it as a direct sequel to the third movie. You pretend 4, 5, and 6 never happened. You do it as a direct sequel to the third movie, and you see if you can get Patricia Arquette. You see if you can get Heather Langenkamp. You see if you can get all those actors that are older now, right? And not as in demand as they were many years ago. Well, not a lot of them were in demand. I think Patricia Arquette was really the only one that went off and had a career. But Patricia Arquette is older. You know, she's not doing Medium anymore. Who knows where she is in her life and how she feels and thinks about her career and things like that. Maybe she'd come back. That's what I would do. So that would be my approach. Johnny T says, hey, Dave, rather than discussing movies, have you ever considered doing a show about true crime? A la Bundy, Jean-Benet Ramsey, Jodi Arias. If not, then sci-fi topics like Bob Lazar story. Well, I would never turn my channel into that because I'm not as well versed in that as I am in movies and the entertainment industry. But certainly, everybody you mentioned there, I have watched all the documentaries. I've watched the true crime. I've watched the Datelines. I've watched the 48 Hours, the 2020s. I watched the 2 hour or the 3 hour or 4 hour, I think it was 4 hour thing on Jean-Benet Ramsey. And like I said, I've said many times, there is no doubt in my mind that there was not an intruder that killed that girl. There was not an intruder that killed that girl. John Ramsey, the father, is a lying sack of crap. He is a lying sack of crap. And Patsy went to the grave a liar. And I'm telling you, there ain't no intruder, folks. There ain't no intruder. And it's not just because of that 4 hour documentary which was very good, but I have thought that for years. I was 17 when the news first broke. I remember it very well. Remember all the covers of the magazines with her on it and shit. And yeah. And my dad didn't think so either. My dad was like, no intruder at all. Anyway, and I'll tell you right now, I can guarantee you a lot of their circle of friends think that too. This is probably why they lost a lot of friends. Anyway, it would be cool to have a topic, like a show where maybe I talk about it. That would be kind of cool. But I would never turn my channel into that. But maybe that's not what you meant. But I would also I'd want to be well-versed on it. Like there's a couple of missing persons cases that I'm really into and things like that. But I'd need to, there's a lot of channels that do it and would do it, and are doing it better than I ever could because I'm not, balls deep, as they say, into that. It would be a very sort of, well, I wouldn't say surface level approach. I think I would go deeper than most people would, but there's still sort of, I don't want to create a false expectation that that's what I'm going to be talking about all the time, but certainly I wouldn't mind for a show, from time to time. Sure. That'd be all right. All right. 5 more minutes, folks. 5 more minutes. Let's see what's going on here. The Filmatic sends in a super chat. Thank you so much, Filmatic. Says, hey, Dave, what is your favorite Zack Snyder movie? Also, thoughts on the Snyder Cut situation. I personally don't care about it because some of the fan base and I believe WB is doing better with DC. Zack Snyder, I don't particularly care as a filmmaker. He has a very specific style, a very specific visual aesthetic to his movies. Let me just, I got to make sure I'm getting his movies right. Zack Snyder. Oh, come on here. Snack Snyder. I said Zack Snyder or Zack Snyder. Came up snack. That's funny. Okay, so director. Let me go back here. So 89, Playground, ZZ Top. He was directing all that. Dawn of the Dead. Okay, I like Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, 300. My Chemical Romance is a short. Watchmen, never saw it. Sucker Punch, didn't care. Man of Steel. Yeah. So I've seen Man of Steel. I've seen Batman v Superman. I haven't seen Justice League. He's in post-production on Army of the Dead. Okay, what's Army of the Dead? Following a zombie outbreak in Las Vegas. Oh, well, this is perfect. This is what Zack Snyder should be doing. He's got a very specific style, and this is the kind of stuff he should be doing. It's very much like his Dawn of the Dead. I see. Army of the Dead. Okay. Yeah, I would say my favorite of his then would be the remake of Dawn of the Dead in 2004, which I saw in the movie theater. Saw that movie theater. That would be my favorite. And the Snyder Cut, I don't care. I just don't care. I'm not emotionally invested to care, so I just don't care. Let me see. Darren Sands, my man, says, is there a more perfect casting decision than, I know what he's going to say. I can see Tiger King there. Than the recently announced Nick Cage playing the Tiger King. Darren, boy, are you right. Now, I think here's what's sad, really. And who knows, maybe this will be a new starting point for Nicolas Cage. But Nicolas Cage is a good actor. Yeah, he's like this a lot, you know. Well, it sounded like Ozzy Osbourne there, but I think you know what I mean, right? You know, he's got that. He's got a style. He's got a shtick. He's got a cadence to him. But he's not talentless. He's a talented actor. I believe he's an Academy Award nominee, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if he won it, but he definitely... Did he win it? Maybe he did win it. Anyway, I think it was for Leaving Las Vegas, if I'm not mistaken. But it's unfortunate to see his career, you know, and it's unfortunate. But I agree with you. I do agree with you. Now, I haven't watched Tiger King. I haven't gotten on that bandwagon yet, but I've seen the trailer, so I get the character. I get the style of the guy. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Nicolas Cage is a perfect casting for that. I really do. I think that's a perfect casting, 100%. Could totally see him doing that. And again, I haven't watched the episodes. I've only seen the trailer, but I could totally see Nicolas Cage doing that and making it believable. Southpaw82 sends in a super chat. Thank you, Southpaw. Says, Freddy and Jason tried in 2009 and 2010, but they failed. Michael comes back in 2018 and becomes the highest grossing slasher ever. Freddy and Jason dead? No. Freddy and Jason are not dead. There's specific reasons why the 2018 film worked. We have to remember that it's not just Michael Myers in a Halloween movie. It's the first Halloween movie released in October since Halloween 5 in 1989. Every movie, Halloween 6, Halloween H2O, Halloween Resurrection, Rob Zombie's 2 Halloween films, were all released in the summer. He wasn't a very good swimmer in the summer. Anyway, it was released in the summer. I believe the closest we got to an October release, I think, was The Curse of Michael Myers, and that was in September, if I'm not mistaken. And then of course you had the story was eliminating a lot of the sequels. It's a direct sequel to the original only. They're bringing Jamie Lee Curtis back. They're bringing John Carpenter back. He's doing the music. They're bringing Nick Castle back. Now I know Nick Castle was in one scene, but not even just one scene, because a scene can be multiple shots. You can have a scene last 5 minutes with 132 shots if you wanted to. But he's in one scene, one shot. Nick Castle's in one shot. But we didn't know that until we saw the movie. We got an idea of that in April of 2018 with an article released by HalloweenDailyNews.com when they did an interview with Nick Castle, and everybody was trying to find out, oh my God, Nick, you're back, you're the man behind the mask. And Nick was the one who was like, whoa. I'm just in this little, like Jim is your Michael now. He said that. Nick Castle said that. And everybody reading that was like, what? We thought James Jude Courtney was Nick Castle's stunt double. Remember that? When it was announced that Nick Castle was coming back to play Michael Myers, and when you went to IMDb, because there was no, there was a little bit of fanfare when it was announced that James Jude Courtney was coming back. But we all thought that James Jude Courtney was going to be Nick Castle's stunt double. And I was one of the ones, as some of you were too, were like, Nick Castle's, he's a little bit of a pop. He's not old. I think it's going to be, and sure enough, it was. But it was brilliant marketing. Brilliant. He's the OG, baby. It's the OG. Brilliant. And Blumhouse they didn't ask. We didn't ask. They didn't say anything. So we found out later, of course. So there's a lot of factors of why Halloween was very successful. I think if you were to approach A Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm not saying it would be as successful. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying if we found out that, like, there was a lot of hype around the 2018 remake. There was no hype around the 2010 remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street. There was worry, skepticism, cynicism, disdain, distaste. I mean, it was like, you know what I mean? Same with Friday the 13th. Although some people do like the Friday the 13th remake. But my point is, if we found out now that, oh my God, so Robert Englund is back, Heather Langenkamp is back, Patricia Arquette is back, they're making a direct sequel to Elm Street 3. The hype train would be exactly the same as Halloween 18 for a lot of people. Like, what the fuck? That doesn't mean the movie's going to be good. It could be a pile of dog shit and embarrassing watching these old farts trying to reclaim their youth. I mean, it could be absolutely embarrassing. But the hype train has left the station. You know what I mean? And so I think we cannot emphasize enough how important the factors were that helped to propel 2018 to the 2018 film to box office success. It wasn't just Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger. I do believe there are Fred heads and Jason fans that are waiting for their time in the sun. I do believe that. And it will be a big game of catch up. There's no doubt about it. Michael has ruled the roost for many years now, for better or worse. But I do think that Fred heads are just waiting. They're just waiting, because we must not forget that at one time, Freddy and Jason were the undisputed heavyweight champions of the world, and Michael was non-existent. So, what will be interesting, and what we've never seen truly, is an era where Michael, Jason, and Freddy can go up against each other on an even playing field. We haven't seen that yet, because when Freddy and Jason were ruling the 1980s, Michael was non-existent. He was MIA. Between 81 and 88, nobody gave a fuck about Michael Myers. He was nowhere to be found. And then when Michael started to take off again, you can't even include 88, 89. You can't include that because the slasher subgenre was on a down curve. When the horror genre, the slasher subgenre, had a bit of a spark in 96 because of Scream, Halloween became popular again. But Freddy and Jason were nowhere around. Yes, there was Freddy versus Jason 2003, but, it's gimmicky, it's shticky, it's not really it's not a thing. So it'll be very interesting to see if Halloween continues to be successful. If Elm Street and Friday come along, that might be a really interesting battle of the Titans there. Oliver Mercer says, thank you for the super chat, Oliver. Regarding the jump rope girls in A Nightmare on Elm Street, was it ever told to us who they were, if Freddy's first victims or not? Great question. There's two ways to think of this. Did we actually get told who they were? I don't recall in any of the movies finding that out, although it's entirely possible we may have. Or it could be in some sort of book, comic. It is canon and they're these people, but they were never in the cinematic universe. We didn't find that out in the cinematic universe, in the movies, but it's in some Freddy comic from years ago, or somebody revealed it on Freddy's Nightmares in the late 80s on that TV show or something like that. I mean, maybe that's possible. I always thought that the jump rope girls were, his victims, were ghosts, ghostly apparitions, if you will, of innocent girls that lost their lives at the hands of Freddy Krueger. And in some weird sort of way, like maybe he preyed upon them when they were jumping rope, right? Maybe he was out one day and he saw them, jumping rope, right? And the 1-2 Freddy's Coming for You is sort of a thing that, it's there because and the girls sing it because it's almost a weird, it shows you the manipulation and control that this man has over their minds. They're singing about me. They're singing about me. You know what I mean? It's like, ugh. Like these girls aren't singing, cute nursery rhymes. No, they're singing about him. Pretty cool stuff. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me here on episode... Yes, I did get that super chat. Episode 51 of McRae Live. Hey, if the gentleman who sent in the super chat last Friday is watching and I didn't answer it, I am so sorry. I meant to get your super chat ready for this episode. I am definitely going to have it ready for McRae Live on Thursday. I meant to do it. I said I was going to do it. My apologies, but you are definitely going to have it answered, my man. 100%. I have not forgotten about you. But yes, thank you everyone in the chat room for sending in your super chats. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the non-super chats, of course. And a shout out and big thanks, of course, to my moderators, Tabitha Short, Darren Sands, Frank Riker, and Jason Nike. You guys are amazing, doing the very best you can to keep that chat room flowing. It ain't easy, folks. It ain't easy. You think it's easy. It ain't easy to keep But the wonderful news, the great thing about our chat room is that 99.9% of the time, it flows like a toilet. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything. Flows like it moves like a well-oiled machine. There you go. That's better. Flows like a toilet. toilet. Woo! All right. Hey, yes, that is going to do it for me. Like I said, you guys are awesome. And I will be back. Reminder to my patrons, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Patreon only live AMA, open to everybody, open to all tiers on my Patreon. So make sure you tune into that tomorrow night. And of course, like I said, I'll be back Thursday morning, 11 o'clock a.m. For McRae Live. And you never know when I might pop up with a standalone video. If I feel like chatting about something, that's always possible. Always possible. You guys are amazing. All right, I'm out here. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.